Hey guys, welcome back to Resistance Chicks. We're your hosts, Leah and Michelle. Today is the 20th of September. It's a Friday. It's just slightly after 6 p.m. where we go live every week with a weekly roundup. And I have to tell you, not only have I missed you guys this week, even though I did do a B video and Patriot Gallery did, I think, 2 shows. You guys have a lot to catch up on. There's so much news. Oh, we haven't done news. I'm like, this is crazy.
I don't even know how we're going to pack it all in.
But we're...
So, yes, Michelle made a bee tutorial yesterday, and that is one major way. These kids should all be learning how to keep bees, learning how to grow their own plants. You guys are right. Okay, so here, back over here.
Joins us tonight. I'm not sure that, like, since the Shakers of northern New England, there has been a religious movement against having children. It's been a long time.
The Shakers didn't believe in getting married or having kids, and of course they did what? They died off, but not before making some of the most beautiful furniture. So, here's an upside.
That's right. Actually, there is a history, even in environmental activism specifically, of catastrophizing the number of people on the planet. Right. If you went back to the late 1960s, there were people like Paul Ehrlich who were taken very seriously, by the scientific community, predictions that the world would be so crowded, we'd all starve, we'd run out of food. Within the decade, that's what Ehrlich predicted. Of course, none of that came true. We didn't implement any of the population controls those people wanted. And despite not doing that, we had more people, and we were able to feed more people than ever. We lifted 1 billion people out of poverty because, in fact, people are the solution, right? More people, a smarter society, we come up with ways to solve these problems. So that's kind of what's sad about this, cutting off the future generation.
I had 4 of them myself, so I'm for people. I think children are the answer, actually, and I mean it. But I do think it's a little bit weird that the people who are telling us that you shouldn't have kids are also pushing for open borders, as, for example, Greenpeace is. So if population is the problem, why aren't they trying to limit ours?
I think specifically with the kids we're talking about, I'm not even sure they take it seriously. Like, we're not supposed to take them literally. It's activism is a kind of social currency for them. It's cool. It's fun to be woke. It's fun to start a hashtag and take Instagram photos of you being super sustainable. Do you know what I mean? It's a way of life for them that signals coolness. And I don't know how exactly to overcome that, but that's totally what we're dealing with.
It just that's a really wise observation. You're younger than I am, so you have better perspective on it. But I would just say there is some percentage that's going to take it seriously that's going to make them neurotic and unhappy. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's no way to live your life, right, is thinking that the world is about to end. People who have that mentality are not happy, well-adjusted people. But of course, activists are always trying to convince you that they're trying to convince themselves that they're having panic attacks, their mental health is terrible, because that's how they prove they're so committed to the cause. And I think
totally true. Anyone who describes himself as an activist should have no control over my life, because by definition, they're neurotic and weird.
Yeah, so did you see the Eat the Rich? Did you hear it as you were going up the stairs?
No, I didn't. Oh, I didn't hear Eat the Rich, no.
Oh.
I heard something about cows and pigs and so on and so forth. That was the good segment that I missed, apparently.
Don't eat cows! Eat the rich! 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 Don't eat cows! Eat the rich!
Okay, but here's the thing. Normally, you would think to yourself, of course they just mean consume them, like, you know, to obliterate them and tear them down. But now that this new movement towards cannibalism is spreading like crazy, it's scary.
No,
it's terrifying.
And I told the viewers while you were away that those children obviously come from rich families. You can just tell.
I know.
And so Thanksgiving will be a plate full of soy and then your mama and daddy on a table.
No, Grandma, because she's the oldest and she'll pull from the system.
Okay, there was another one. Where is she? Crazy girl. Tell me I tweeted her out, because I'll tell you what, there was one girl just screaming today. Let me see if I can find her. So, Michelle, what are you thinking about this climate strike happening today?
All right, so I did have some thoughts on this. I'm glad that you asked, Leah, because I understand wanting to stand for something. I mean, there's the age-old, what is the word, adage?
Stand
for if
for
you don't
nothing,
stand
you
for something,
fall
you'll fall
for
for everything. And so I can applaud to a point these children wanting to rally behind something, but it's actually evidence of this massive void that we have failed our children since taking prayer out of and God out of society, not just schools, out of society. Because we do need to feel like there's purpose in life. We do need to feel like we are fighting evil. We do need to feel the strength that comes from that. It's natural within us, okay? And kids used to have that. Society used to have that. Right and wrong, and then rebellion, okay, had its place as well, but it was actually open-faced bad things. But now, all of these things that they're touting as bad and evil, some of them are, but it's very hard to differentiate, and there's so many decoys out there, I think, for what evil is, that we're missing the mark.
What do we want? Money justice! What do we want? Now! What do we want? Money justice! What do we want it? Now! If we don't get it, shut it down! If we don't get it, shut it down! If we don't get it, shut it down!
Okay, what the heck are they going to shut down? If we don't get it, shut it down. Because I interviewed some kids, and they're not giving up their iPhones. So here's a little known tidbit. They have children in Africa mining for cobalt that goes into these iPhones. And these children, and it's a lot of the little tiny intricate things that go into our smartphones are not sustainable whatsoever. And they are polluting the environment to a great extent. And these kids are filming.
And using limited resources like palladium and other precious metals and so on and so forth. Silver, gold.
We're going to play this little. The climate has always been changing.
The climate has been constantly changing since the Earth was formed 4.6 billion years ago.
We say thousands
For example,
of years.
In just the past 2,000 years, we have seen the Roman warm period, when it was warmer than today. Then came the cooler Dark Ages, followed by the medieval warm period, when it was at least as warm as today. Then we had the Little Ice Age that drove the Vikings out of Greenland, and most recently, a gradual 300-year warming to the present day. That's a lot of changes.
Okay, so that's what I really wanted to point out. There's absolutely no way that we can control the climate. Like, seriously, there is literally no way you can do it, especially with carbon, okay? Trying to reduce carbon. And the one thing I would say, like, to the people who want to get rid of cows, I'm going to play a video here by Andrew Yang telling everybody to stop eating meat because cows... Now, I would say that it's not sustainable or healthy to the environment to raise cows that the way a lot of
Factory
these cows
farms,
are raised. They have to be, they're fed, a lot of them are fed on grass, but then they're fattened on corn, which is not healthy. But if you're eating a cow that is, here's the thing, if you're eating a cow that was fed entirely on grass, that is literally the most sustainable food that you can eat. It just happens to be a fenced-in deer. You know what I'm saying? Nobody looks around and says, oh, these deer are damaging the environment, right? And so that's the same thing with cattle who can survive, whether you like it or know it or not, completely. I'm talking about completely on grass.
But also, and of course I don't have the numbers, and the left could get me on this part, but when buffalo roamed America, there were more buffalo than there are factory farm cows right now.
And that's where I was going to get at. There were more buffalo, let's say about 200 years ago, before we started to kill off the buffalo, maybe 300 years ago. That was a bad thing. Either they were just killing them for their pelts, and it's horrible, horrible what they did to the buffalo.
I love buffalo.
Yeah, they're awesome. And but here's the thing. Buffalo would go in, and if you watch Joe Salatin or you read some of his books talking about mob stock grazing, you would have some of the historical accounts of bison and buffalo in this country are watching a buffalo herd, a bison herd come through, and you can't see, it would take 3 days for them to pass. Yeah. And you couldn't see for miles and miles. 3 miles long.
That's ridiculous.
And they would mob stock graze is what they did, and they would just eat the grass as they go, stomp it down, totally destroy it. But in doing so, They were building up the soil, regenerating the soil, breaking up a lot of seed heads. And then birds would come in, and giant flocks of birds would come in and just devastate the poop piles, spread it out, and you have a regenerative natural system.
Exactly.
So
kind of like what you're talking about is almost like a burn, right? Like a natural burn off of land, and then it gets to start over fresh.
So tell them what we do, what our other sustainable kind of mob stock farmers do to recreate that, like with the fencings.
Okay, so we have movable fencing. So what Joel Salatin does is, and of course he does this on a very large scale, but he'll have his cattle out, and they do their thing for a set number of days, and then they move the cattle out, and then they follow that with, well, it depends. They may follow it with chicken tractors for meat birds.
Right.
Okay, then they do scratch up things. They may follow that with, I don't think he does sheep or goats, but you could. Right. Okay, and goats are ideal because they will eat the weeds that the cows don't eat. And then you follow it like with the chickens or like rabbit tractors or whatever. Right. And they're like a natural manure spreader. And that's how we replicate. Like, so we do it with our meat birds here on our God's little acre, on what little plot of land that we have been given by the Lord. And it makes you feel good. You can see the natural, like our chickens go and they devastate the grass. Almost all but devastate it, and all we have to do is throw down some cheap seed, and we've now had, them manurify, a nutrient dense soil, help build up our soil, which we need because we do have erosion problems and so forth. So it's all around a great thing.
Screaming child that I watched. We'll see if I can.
Boss Torres says like the scene from Dances with the Wolves. Yes. Electric Guy says, Buffalo Gal, won't you come out tonight? Won't you come out tonight? Won't you come out tonight? Redneck says, the earth takes care of itself.
Oh, my word. Breeding kills earth.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
All right, but here's what's really sad about that. And I don't want to get really serious after seeing that. And I also don't want to get taken off to jail. But that mindset, and I am not saying this is what anyone on the planet should do, that mindset leads to, well, I should go kill myself.
Exactly.
Because how can you say breeding kills the earth and you have a right to remain living? You don't. You can't have it both ways.
So this is total brainwashing of kids. Like, this is a sick scene that I'm watching right now.
And that's what I keep thinking, actually. Do you know that the Bible says, train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they are old, they won't depart from it? And you know what? God makes children impressionable on purpose. It's a good thing that they are impressionable, okay? Yeah. Because if you raise them to be godly, then they will take that with them for the rest of their lives. And so the left may say to, let's say, a Christian family, how dare you raise your children to be Christian because you're just brainwashing them. Any child is being brainwashed. It's whether you're being brainwashed for the right or good things. I meant, I didn't mean liberally.
Here's the thing.
It's for goodness and righteousness or evil.
If they believed, if any of them believed that we weren't going to be here in 10 or 12 years, then they would stop driving all their cars.
Exactly.
There would be no buses because you would homeschool.
Right.
Busing children.
You would start doing every single thing locally.
I can understand why kids would climate strike because those diesel buses put off more pollution.
Well, but let's take this even farther. Like, so today we have a friend that we're trying to bake something for and send in the mail, and she can't have white sugar right now. And so I needed to buy some other alternate to sugars. I bought some stevia and I bought, coconut sugar or something like that. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, stevia can be grown locally, but to get this big giant bag that I bought of it for like $4, okay, it was like $6. It requires it to be grown someplace else and then processed, packaged, and shipped to me. And so the unfortunate part about all of these children is that these ideals of veganism and so on and so forth that they are all brainwashed into, to stop eating meat and whatnot, none of it can be done locally except for vegetables. Okay.
But in season.
And then that has to be in season. And if they're canning, then they're using jars that have to be made. So every single thing that these kids want to do that is super duper health nut or organic requires for them to have a massive, not just carbon footprint, but just wasteful of the earth footprint. They don't know how to function. And actually, if they were to learn the proper way to take care of the earth, it would require meat eating.
Yes.
Okay. And they can't go that far. It would also require them to get rid of technology. It would require for them to get rid of cars, to do things locally, to get horses and buggies. All of these things would require that.
There are many things that we can do to save and help the environment. I am all about the environment is being hurt. Animals are being hurt. Things are being hurt. But they don't actually care about that. And that's the sick twist of it. There's a millennial generation in their 20s who started to recognize the factory farms were bad. And you know what they did? They and a lot of our friends decided, I'm going to just start farming.
Right.
That's what I have to do.
After watching Food Inc.
I need to start farming. I need to start growing my own. And many of our young friends in their 20s, the millennials, they're making their own bread. They're trying to buy raw milk. They're trying to do things that if we all did them would heal the planet, especially if we did it on a planet-wide scale, would heal the planet overnight.
Exactly.
As Joel Salatin says, even if you were worried about climate or CO2, what our system does is actually pulls
carbon sequestration, which pulls the carbon out of the atmosphere.
Right. And remember, guys, plants. Here's the thing: if you want to get some of the excess carbon out, you plant more trees.
Right.
You plant more plants. We have entire sections of, let's say, the northern Africa that have been deforested.
Right.
Then we should put our brains together and our brawn together, and start to plant forests. These children live in subdivisions that have been totally obliterated of all life. And then they have a little flower bed, and the sun beats down on these children's homes, and the air conditioning runs. And
I mean, that's the thing I'm not hearing from these kids. Like, Mom, Dad, we have to stop using the air conditioner.
Right.
Like, in all honesty, if they were doing that, I might take them more seriously, and I might respect them more.
When I was a kid, we didn't have air conditioning in schools. We didn't have air conditioning until I got into high school.
These kids in their public school system have massive big screen televisions. Yeah. They all have their iPads. They don't know how to write cursive. They don't use pen and paper anymore. They don't use pencils.
And so, when people on the right say, hey,
could we go back to like everybody has a slate? Now that's renewable. Yeah. Chalk.
Right.
I mean, seriously, these kids, and those kinds of things actually aren't going to save them. You can have paper. Paper is very renewable. You can have these things within reason as long as you do the bigger things, like spread out. Don't live in suburbia. Don't live on a farm.
Two parents driving about 45 minutes each way every day. What if you just said, you know what? I want to save the planet. The first thing we're going to do is have one parent stay at home.
Right.
And we're going to homeschool kids.
And these kids they can't fathom that. They can't fathom the fact that how we save the planet is local. Everything local, from government to shopping to farming. Everything needs to be taken from Trump saying you don't want to buy from China. I'm going, you don't want to buy from California if you live in Ohio.
Right. These kids are still going to go out to dinner.
Yeah.
They're still going to demand pizza. They're just not going to put meat on it.
Yeah.
Right? And they're going to think that they're doing a good job.
Or they're going to do it gluten-free, which actually, do you understand, wheat is God's gift to mankind?
It's very
and to go gluten-free is actually more harmful to the planet.
And you can actually grow wheat at an industrial large scale. It's like the one product that
they've been doing it since the Bible, baby.
Go back to Boaz. In thousands of acres that even you and I actually could go and harvest it, and a neighborhood could harvest enough in a couple days for enough to have the whole town have have wheat bread for a year.
Right.
And so wheat is one of those things. But corn takes a lot more to be harvested. It's got to be harvested
It's
by hand.
harder on the... So corn strips from the soil, wheat gives back to the soil.
Well, it does take from the soil, but not as much. And certainly not as much as soybeans. All these kids want to go, and you need protein in your life, right? So they're all eating this massive amounts of soy, which is why they're all kind of cray-cray, too much estrogen. But soybeans are literally the worst things that you can plant for the environment. It really is. I'm going to go over here.
It just goes to show how ignorant they are. They're just spouting what they're told. They believe everything they're told.
Right.
Around the impact that humankind is having on the planet. I mean, you can see that in the way in which the language changes. So it used to be climate change, then it was climate emergency, now it's climate chaos. There's this constant ramping up of the politics of fear. And one of the things that worries me is firstly that I think this will impact on our ability to pursue economic growth and to ensure that all human beings around the world are liberated from poverty. And I also think it is pumping the next generation with this really fearful attitude to the world. If you look at someone like Greta Thunberg, who is a hero of the climate strike movement, she talks about feeling terrified and living in a state of fear and thinking that the house is on fire. I think it's a profound abdication of adult responsibility to allow children to feel so petrified about daily life. And we know that there is this new mental malaise on the rise called eco-anxiety among young people. And I think that's not surprising because they are fed a narrative of fear constantly by green protesters and green activists and by politicians and by teachers. I think it's a very worrying, fearful form of politics which does not have any hopeful vision for mankind, but is simply about preserving the status quo or reining in.
Exactly. It doesn't have a good vision. And I guess I'm not going to find the screaming girl giving her speech for you guys, but I think we can kind of move on. We got a lot of stories to talk about.
Yeah, we could talk about this all day.
Yeah,
but segment. Patriot Gallery will break it up though. So
yeah, so there was a young poor girl giving a balloon of the world. That's nice. When I was a kid, there was environmentalism, and it was reduce, reuse, recycle. And they talked about saving the planet. And that was a while ago, and things have gotten much, much, much worse as far as in the environment and taking care of the environment. I think that's.
I can't.
You guys,
you know, when Thomas Jefferson became president and he moved into the White House, he was actually governor of the public school in Washington, D.C. at the time. And I've told you guys this before. The things that they were studying there, these kids, they used the Bible for their education, and they could memorize whole books of the Bible. One student literally recite it verbatim from front to back. And the teachers would do these things as well. And there was a sense of righteousness because of the word of God has power to it. Mm-hmm. And that's why we had so many godly statesmen. Yeah. Kids were encouraged to grow up and become leaders in their country. Yeah. And they used God and they used the Bible to fight for righteousness. And that's why we have the abolition of slavery. Yeah. Because their brains were renewed and washed through godly education, because kids are impressionable. Yeah. And these kids don't understand that they are literally just being used. The thing that got me before you move on.
Do we upload the full videos of us interviewing those crazy kids? To full videos?
I don't know, Leah. We can get that another time. But, go ahead. Because we have so much to cover. But the thing that is heartbreaking to me is this stop breeding thing. To tell kids that to save the environment, to save the earth, you have to stop having children. There's so many red flags about this because it's innate in all of us to want to have children. Okay. Almost everyone is called by God to be fruitful and multiply. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't get a chance to do that, it is a hard thing in life. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, if you are told that you can't do something, that it is innate in you that you want to do, then that is all that you feel guilty for something natural inside of you. You know, these kids are told, however you feel, if you're a homosexual, trans, or whatever your gender is, whatever you feel inside, you need to own that and hone it. And there's nothing wrong with your feelings. Well, what if your feelings inside of you tell you, I need to have kids?
Yeah.
Now you're being told that you have to squash that for the greater good. Okay? Yeah. And so we have this double standard going on, and that's very confusing for kids to process when they're being told, express yourself, go with your feelings, repress yourself, squash your feelings on two different sides. And the mental instability that happens there is so dangerous. And then they have self-guilt for even now. But all right, you guys, we love you. God loves you. God bless. Remember, it is not just a conspiracy theory if it's actually the truth. And we'll see you back on Sunday. God bless.
Shine, Jesus, shine.
I was cold.